Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming and attending our press conference. My name is Rabia Ahmed, and I'm the Media and Communication Director for the Muslim Public Affairs Council. Today we have a representation of American, Muslim, and Syrian-American leadership here, who are here to express concern over the Russian airstrikes in Syria and to call on the Russian government to cease military strikes that have killed civilians and have destroyed civilian infrastructure. In the last week itself, we have witnessed the destruction of multiple hospitals and the loss of hundreds of civilian lives. Speaking today, we have Huda Hawa. She is the Director of Advocacy and Policy at the Muslim Public Affairs Council. I ask that all speakers, when they approach this area, that they repeat their name, they spell their names, and that they reintroduce their title for your convenience. After every person is done speaking, we will have a short Q&A, and we will allow the speakers to have one-on-one with anyone who wants to have one-on-one interviews. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Huda Hawa, spelled H-O-D-A, last name H-A-W-A, and I am the Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Muslim Public Affairs Council. We're here today as American Muslims and Syrian Americans expressing our deepest concerns in light of the recent military intervention in Syria by Russia. The introduction of Russian airstrikes in Syria will only worsen the already devastating humanitarian crisis, cause a new influx of refugees, and give further ammunition to ISIS propaganda and recruitment efforts. Russia's role is becoming increasingly detrimental to the aspirations of the Syrian people for their fight for freedom and human dignity against a tyrant. Further, Russia is playing into the hands of ISIS and other terrorist groups who will use this military offense as a means to recruit more fighters to assist them in ridding a Muslim country from a perceived occupier. Not only is Russia engaging in this conflict with military power, but they are entering a danger zone by bringing about a rhetorical religious war using Russia's Orthodox Church. The Church recently stated that it is Russia's moral compass that is leading it to engage in a holy fight to protect Christian minorities. Words matter, and engaging in that type of rhetoric only lends more credibility to the messages of ISIS. The current military approach only leads to more death and destruction. We urge President Putin to cease military involvement in Syria and aid in the humanitarian relief on the ground. And we're here today in front of the Russian embassy, urging President Putin and his administration to shift their policies and their strategy. This conflict is not going to end with a military strategy. This is going to end with a political solution. So we call on the US and our partners to rethink our strategy in Syria. We must deal with Assad and countering ISIS simultaneously. Without that shift in policy, Assad and ISIS will continue to use each other to perpetuate the worst humanitarian crisis since World War II. Thank you.
Thank you, Huda. Next up, we have Suzanne Meriden. She is the Director of Operations from the Syrian-American Council.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here, and thank you to the organizers. My name is Suzanne Meriden. That's spelled S-U-Z-A-N-N-E. Meriden, M-E-R-I-D-E-N. I'm the Director of Operations at the Syrian-American Council, SAC. SAC strongly condemns the Russian aggression currently happening in Syria. Russia has claimed that it is going into Syria to target ISIS, when all it has done so far is target anti-ISIS and anti-Assad regime groups. What that has done is it has allowed Russia to strengthen ISIS and to actually prop up the Assad regime, which has been responsible for the killing of over 300,000 people, the displacement of millions of people, and the migration of 4 million people out of Syria into other areas in the world. We are today asking the Obama administration and the international community to work together to quickly address this aggression. The targets that Russia has gone after have killed innocent civilians, including women and children, and rescue workers, and has destroyed infrastructures, including hospitals tending to those injured. We are calling on the administration to immediately look into the aggression and to call for a no-fly zone and safe zones in strategic areas inside Syria in order to immediately stop the killing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Suzanne. Next, we have Nihad Awad, who's the Executive Director of the Council on American Islamic.
Bonjour, good morning. Nihad Awad, N-I-H-A-D-A-W-A-D, the National Executive Director of CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations. We're here in front of the Russian embassy to send a very clear and loud message that the Russian intervention in this conflict is adding fuel to the fire. The last thing the region needs to see is more fuel to the fire, more armies fighting on the side of dictator. The last thing the region needs to see and hear is a religious war terminology that has been reintroduced by the Russian church. I think the administration of Putin and their decision to add fuel to the fire in the conflict is unwise. It is counterproductive. It does not serve the interest of Russia. It does not serve the interest of the Syrian people. It does not serve the peaceful hope of this resolution that we all anticipate and would like to see. Unfortunately, as we all have seen, the Russian airstrikes have targeted the pro-democracy movements, and therefore the Russian airstrikes are prolonging the life of a dictatorial regime in the region, when the hopes of the Syrian people were on the fact that the Assad regime was on its last leg. We see a resurrection, an extension of the life of the suffering of the Syrian people. And that will also mean more refugees, more displacement of Syrian people within Syria and outside Syria. That means more influx of refugees on Europe, and pressure is increasing on the US administration also to take in more refugees. What does it mean for religious extremism? It's reigniting religious extremism on both sides, non-Muslim side and Muslim side. And definitely ISIS has been helped in this intervention. Russia is playing into the hands of ISIS because ISIS could not get a better way to recruit more people in their apocalyptic war against the others. So unfortunately, the Russian decision to take this unwise decision to intervene without the help, without the cooperation of the United States and Western allies is making life more harder and worse for the Syrian people. It is making us, unfortunately, lose hope in a peaceful and immediate resolution to this conflict. But also, and this is my last point, unfortunately, the inaction of the American administration and the reluctance to take decisive actions to end this conflict and to put more assets and resources from us as Americans to end this conflict gave a green light to Russia to meddle with the Middle East again. And unfortunately, this maybe is a wake-up call for the US administration to put its act together and pressure Russia to stop this childish intervention when we all were hoping that this conflict was almost towards its end. Now we see no end for this conflict, unfortunately.
Thank you, Tad. Next we have Evan Barrett from the Syrian-American Task Force.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming. My name is Evan Barrett, E-V-A-N B-A-R-R-E-T-T. I am the Deputy Director of the Syrian Emergency Task Force, and I'm here representing the Coalition for a Democratic Syria. As my colleagues and friends have mentioned, the new Russian intervention has created a much more dangerous and depressing phase of this war, and yet I can't help but feel that we are perhaps out in front of the wrong building. The reason that the Russians are able to act like this, is that the Americans have constantly injected rhetoric into this conflict and have not enforced any of their own positions. We have the gall, our government has the gall, to call the CIA-backed rebels on the ground our partners, our allies, our boots on the ground against the Islamic State. And yet this very week, the administration confirmed that it will not protect those very partners that we work with on the ground from Russian strikes. This is completely unacceptable. America is losing its credibility on the global stage. Our allies cannot rely on us, and our enemies do not fear us. The United States must immediately either confront Russian and regime airplanes in the sky through a no-fly zone or supply our Syrian partners with man-pads so that they can defend themselves and their communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Azhar Aziz. He's the president of the Islamic Society of North America.
Assalamu alaikum, greetings of peace. My name is Azhar Aziz, spelled as A-Z-H-A-R. Last name is Aziz, A-Z-E-E-Z. I'm the president of Islamic Society of North America. And on behalf of ISNA, one of the oldest national Islamic organizations, we call upon the government of the Russian Federation to seize and halt and stop its current military mobilization in Syria immediately. The current crisis in Syria is surrounding this entire region is a humanitarian and a civil tragedy. Military action in the region will not curb the growing threat of terrorist organizations such as ISIS, but rather encourage more extremist recruitment as well as bring more unrest to the people who have already suffered so much. We renew our call on our administration and the international community to establish a no-fly zone in northern and southern Syria to prevent further death and destruction to the civilian population and to reduce the flow of Syrian refugees. On behalf of Islamic Society of North America, we ask upon the Russian Federation and its citizens to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Syrian people and help in restoring the dignity of life to the people who have had to combat such hardships thus far. So military action has not and will not work as a possible solution. Islamic Society of North America urges Ambassador Sergei Kislyak to meet with the Muslim organizations and the Syrian organizations who are based over here in US so that they can express their critical concerns related to the innocent civilians being killed. We need to focus on refugees and refugee assistance. We ask our administration once again to help the Syrian refugee situation and help the efforts by increasing the resettlement of the Syrian refugees to the US and increase it up to 50,000 or more. The current proposal by the administration to allow 10,000 to resettle is not sufficient given the magnitude of our nation. I want to share with you some of the important numbers. In last 5 years, there have been several thousands and thousands of people who have been killed. More than 4 million people are refugees in neighboring countries. More than 12.2 million Syrians are in desperate need of humanitarian assistance, and more than 5.5 million are children, and more than 7.6 million are internally displaced according to UN. So this is the time for all of us to act and help the situation in Syria. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Dr. Majid Abu Ali. He is a Syrian doctor from around the area of Damascus. He recently just arrived in the US and he will be speaking about the devastating effects of the military strikes in the facilities and the infrastructure of that area.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Majid Abu Ali, M-A-G-E-D A-B-O-A-L-I. I'm working with the medical office of Eastern Ghouta, which is a besieged area just 10 kilometers away from Damascus, the capital. My area has been besieged since 3 years without electricity or water. My colleagues there are trying to provide medical and health care for the civilians who are living there. There is more than 400,000 people living in this area. And last August, more than 500 people were killed by airstrikes there. My colleagues there launched an initiative about stop killing in Syria and stop the bloodshed, provide protection for the civilians. We are doctors and we believe in statistics. So more than 90% of the civilians who were killed in Syria were killed by airstrikes. More than 95% of the hospitals which were targeted in Syria were targeted by airstrikes. So it's easy to think this way, that the main cause of death in Syria is airstrike. Those doctors now are shocked by the news that there is more military jets, more military troops will be on the ground, there is more killing. Some of them came 2011 to Syria. They were working in Europe and came to Syria to build their country and to help their colleagues in Syria to provide health care. Now the same people are thinking to flee across the Mediterranean to Europe. So more military jets, more airstrikes means that the refugees crisis will increase. In the last 10 days, more than 10 hospitals in Syria were targeted by airstrikes, and more than 5 medics were killed in many hospitals and many governors. So those people are trying to flee to anywhere. In ISIS area, the civilians are more protected. There is no targeting for hospitals. There is no targeting for civilians. So are we thinking about send people to live in ISIS area instead of providing protection for them? We are asking to stop airstrikes in Syria. We are asking to no-fly zone. We wish that no-fly zone will be the whole of Syria. We are asking for protection for civilians and protection for at least the humanitarian aid workers. And that will not be with more troops and more military jets from the Russian. Thank you.
And finally, we have Dr. Zahir Sahlul, and he is with the Syrian-American Medical Society. He is a board member and one of the main organizers of this event.
Good morning. My name is Zahir Sahlul, Z-A-H-E-R, Sahlul, S-A-H-L-O-U-L. I'm from the Syrian-American Medical Society and also from the American Relief Coalition for Syria. And I have with my hand a letter that will be delivering to the embassy, to the Russian embassy. And just to let you know about our engagement with the Russians before the conflict and throughout the conflict, just 1 year ago we met with the Russian delegation in the United Nations, and we asked them to help us in delivering humanitarian assistance to areas under siege where Dr. Majid came from, in East Al-Ghouta. There were 26 patients on hemodialysis that were dying because the Syrian government was not allowing dialysis kits to get into Al-Ghouta. And at that time, the Russian delegation helped us getting dialysis kits to the areas under siege. 3 weeks ago, some of us were in Moscow, members of the ISNA, Islamic Society of North America, were in Moscow to attend the inauguration of the largest mosque in Moscow. And they delivered a letter on behalf of the Syrian-American and Muslim American organization to President Putin in person, asking him to play more constructive role in Syria and influence the Syrian regime so they can stop the bombing of civilian areas and also stop the bombing of hospitals. Unfortunately, President Putin did not read the letter or did not listen to the letter, and 2 weeks ago or a week ago they started bombing areas that were supported by our own government. These areas that are being bombed in Aleppo, in Idlib, in Hama are areas that our humanitarian assistance are going to, supported by our own government. Some of the hospitals that were destroyed were hospitals that supported by SAMS and other organizations that are getting assistance from our own government. Some of the civilians who were killed are civilians that are dependent on the care and the humanitarian assistance from our own government. There are more than 100 people who were killed in the last week just because of the Russian bombing. So what we are asking the Russian Federation, and we will be meeting hopefully with the members of the embassy, is to play a more constructive role. And we really appreciate the solidarity of the Muslim organizations, Muslim American organizations. And I can tell you that in the United States there are more voices asking to our administration to have more proactive policies in Syria, to have safe zones in northern Syria and southern Syria. There are some countries that are very helpful to the Syrian population, like Turkey, like Jordan, like Lebanon. They open their doors to Syrian refugees. They spend billions of dollars to help the Syrian refugees. Turkey and Jordan are ready to help our government to establish safe zones near the Turkish and Jordanian border, so people in Syria can feel some level of security, so we can stop the flow of the refugee exodus to Europe. There are some countries in Europe that took the leadership, like Germany and Sweden, in opening their doors for refugee resettlement in Europe. We expect our government to do this, to do the same thing. We expect our own government to open the doors for Syrian refugees resettlement in the United States. More than members of the Congress, many members of the Congress have asked for opening the door for 60,000 people and 100,000 Syrian refugees by next year, and we are asking for the same thing. So after the conclusion of this press conference, we'll be delivering this letter to the embassy, to the Russian embassy, asking them to stop the bombing of hospitals, stop the bombing of civilians in Syria, play a constructive role in forcing the Syrian regime to accept a political compromise that will satisfy the aspiration of the Syrian people and end the bloodshed in Syria. Thank you. Our frustration of the recent bombing of the Russian Federation in Syria that led to civilian casualties and targeting of hospitals and inflaming the situation further. And we're asking the Russian Federation to play a more constructive role in Syria. We'll try to deliver it. There is no guarantee that they will accept it. Yes, we are a group of Syrian-American and Muslim American organization. We have a letter to Ambassador Islamic. Can we come in?
Whether you have a letter?
Yes, we have a letter. We did send it yesterday, but we would like to deliver it by in hand.
You don't have the opportunity. You don't trust the American Postal Service?
We send it by email to the embassy, but we would like to deliver the letter to the ambassador or whoever is appointed by the ambassador to receive the letter.
It's not acceptable.
Can you just open the door and take the letter? Maybe the guard can deliver it to the ambassador?
Oh.
That's unfortunate.
This is a basic courtesy in America. When someone comes to your door to deliver a message, you should have the courtesy at least of opening the door, receive the message, and we appreciate that. If you're not willing even to open your door to receive the message, that says a lot more, unfortunately, about your attitude.
I guess
which is in line with their policy. They're not even willing to talk.
They're not willing to release the message, and this is really very positive message asking the Russian Federation to play a constructive role in Syria. And we believe that Russia has a lot of allies in the region, including people who thought that Russia will help the Syrian people by this recent intervention, and right now it looks like they're doing the opposite. We're going to slide the letter underneath the door, and hopefully someone can take it and give it to the ambassador, and hopefully the ambassador will read it. Thank you.